Most gardeners think low yields mean they need more fertilizer. I used to think the same, but the real problem in struggling gardens isn't a lack of nutrients you can buy in a bag. It's mineral imbalance and dead soil biology. When soil loses its mineral structure, nutrients leach out, roots weaken, microbes collapse, and plants become dependent on constant feeding. You end up spending more and harvesting less. I learned this the hard way after seasons of heavy fertilizing that gave me fast growth but soft stems, pest pressure, and declining soil texture. One of the tools that helped me stop guessing was a simple soil meter that measures moisture, temperature, pH, and light in seconds. I use it constantly when testing beds and compost zones because mineral availability changes with moisture and pH swings more than most people realize. Catching those shifts early prevents lockout and root stress. I'll leave the exact one I use in the description if you want to check it out. It's not flashy, but it prevents the kind of quiet mistakes that slowly wreck soil performance. Let's talk about what actually rebuilds mineral strength naturally. The old growers I've studied don't treat soil like a feeding tray. They treat it like a living mineral bank, and once I started applying these principles across backyard plots, raised beds, and even substrate blends in hydro systems, I stopped chasing fertilizers entirely. The first rule is to stop stripping your soil bare between crops. Exposed soil is mineral loss in slow motion. Rain dissolves soluble elements. Sun bakes microbial glues that hold particles together. Wind carries away the lightest, most nutrient-dense fractions. I keep every bed covered year-round with either living roots or dense organic cover. In vegetable beds, that means clover understory between rows or a 5 to 8 centimeter mulch layer after harvest. In raised beds, I'll use shredded leaves or cured straw. Within one season, soil texture shifts from dusty and compacted to crumbly and moisture stable. That structure is what holds minerals in place. The second rule is to feed microbes, not plants. Plants trade sugars for minerals. If microbial populations collapse, that trade system fails. I add microbe foods, not plant foods. Simple inputs work. Diluted molasses at about 1 tablespoon per 4 liters of water during active growth fermented plant extracts and fungal-rich compost. In cooler months, I top dress with vermicast and leaf mold instead of fast nitrogen sources. Roots grow denser because microbes mine minerals far beyond root reach. Yields increase without forcing growth. There's a reason I'm emphasizing biology first. The third rule is to return what you harvest. Most gardens quietly mine minerals year after year. Every tomato, cabbage head, or bunch of greens carries calcium, potassium, magnesium, trace metals. If you only reapply nitrogen-heavy inputs, the deeper mineral profile keeps shrinking. I compost all crop residues except diseased material and return them to the same beds. Wood ash from clean, untreated wood goes back in small amounts, about a handful per square meter, to replace potassium and trace minerals. Crushed eggshells are slow calcium, nothing fancy. The fourth rule is deeper roots, deeper minerals. Surface feeding creates shallow roots. Shallow roots access a narrow nutrient zone. I water deeply and less frequently, so roots chase moisture downward. In most soils, that means watering until moisture reaches 15 to 20 centimeters depth, then waiting until the top few centimeters dry before watering again. My soil meter helps confirm depth instead of guessing. In raised beds, I check multiple corners because moisture distribution lies. Once roots go deep, plants tap mineral layers untouched for years. This alone changed my crop resilience during heat waves. The fifth rule is controlled disturbance, not constant tilling. You see, frequent tilling oxidizes organic matter and disrupts fungal networks that transport minerals. Personally, I only disturb the top few centimeters when planting. For those compacted zones, I broad fork just once per season, and I make sure not to flip the layers. That way, soil aggregates stay intact and those fungal strands remain connected. Water infiltration really improves and minerals stay bound in stable structures instead of just washing away. After 2 seasons of reduced disturbance, my beds needed less irrigation and, honestly, produced firmer, more nutrient-dense crops. This is where most modern advice, well, gets it wrong. The 6th rule is diversity above ground equals balance below ground. Monocrops drain specific minerals repeatedly. Mixed plantings balance extraction patterns. I rotate heavy feeders like tomatoes and brassicas with legumes, deep-rooted herbs, and leafy greens. Even in small backyard beds, simple rotations prevent depletion. In containers, I swap crop families and refresh with compost-rich blends between cycles. In hydro systems, mineral balance is controlled differently, but root exudate diversity still influences microbial inoculants and biofilm stability. Different roots release different compounds, different microbes respond, different minerals get mobilized. The 7th rule is slow inputs build permanent structure. Quick fertilizers dissolve fast and disappear fast. Slow inputs form stable mineral bonds. Rock dust in small annual doses, biochar charged with compost tea, and aged compost create long-term mineral reservoirs. I mix about 5 to 10% charged biochar into new beds and add a thin compost layer each season. Over time, soil-cation exchange capacity improves. Nutrients stay available instead of leaching. Plants regulate uptake naturally. This is the part most people never see happening. Minerals don't just exist in soil. They cycle between locked, soluble, and biological forms. Microbes release acids that free-bound nutrients. Fungi transport them. Organic matter holds them like a sponge. Stable carbon structures anchor everything. When those systems function together, fertilizer becomes optional. And, yes, this works beyond traditional soil plots. In raised beds, mineral drift happens faster because volumes are smaller. That's why I'm stricter with cover, compost return, and deep watering. In containers, I rely heavily on compost, vermicast, and mineral-rich amendments because leaching is constant. In hydroponics, mineral restoration looks different, but root zone monitoring, microbial inoculants, and solution stability follow the same biological logic. Different systems, same principles. If this kind of practical soil science is useful to you, subscribe now. Most growers don't talk about minerals because they're slower to measure than nitrogen boosts. But minerals determine flavor, resilience, and nutrient density. Let's clear up one myth. You don't fix weak soil by pouring more products into it. You fix it by rebuilding structure, biology, and mineral cycles so the soil feeds itself. Fertilizer dependency is usually a symptom of broken systems. When I shifted to these rules, I noticed changes most gardeners miss. Leaves thickened, pest pressure dropped, water needs stabilized, harvests stored longer without spoilage, soil smell turned rich and earthy instead of flat. These are mineral and microbial signals, not marketing claims. Healthy soil acts alive because it is alive, and none of this requires expensive inputs. It requires consistency, observation, and respecting how soil ecosystems function. The flashy solutions promise speed. The biological approach builds permanence. If you care about long-term productivity, nutrient density, and resilient harvests, mineral stewardship is non-negotiable. Understand the soil, support the biology, protect the structure. The rest follows naturally. Subscribe for practical growing knowledge and share this with someone who's tired of chasing fertilizers instead of building real soil.